The hot Lagos sun was still blazing as Cynthia adjusted her oversized designer sunglasses and stepped out of the yellow taxi parked just outside her modest apartment building in Oshodi. Her nylon bags of vegetables and frozen meat dropped with a soft thud on the sandy floor as she stretched her neck with pride. She turned back to the middle-aged man behind the wheel, a calm, humble man with graying hair and kind but tired eyes, and hissed, "I thought you were just being generous," she said sharply. "If I had known you were looking for payment, I wouldn't have entered your car." The man gave a soft chuckle, still polite, still calm. "Madam, it's not the money. I don't mind helping. But next time, be honest. You should have said you had no fare. I would have still given you a ride. I just don't like being manipulated." Before he could finish his sentence, a loud slap echoed in the air. Cynthia's palm had landed squarely on his cheek. Without a second thought, she picked up the half bottle of water in her hand and emptied the rest on him. The man froze, his face soaked, his shirt wet, and his hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from restraint. "You must be out of your senses to talk to me like that," Cynthia snarled. "In case you don't know, my husband is Jonathan Okafor, a top reservoir engineer at Maxwell Group. I can get you arrested, imprisoned, and accused of harassment. You'll rot in jail and nobody will be able to save you." The man said nothing. He looked at her for a long second, his expression unreadable. Then, without a word, he turned around, walked calmly to his car, and drove away. Cynthia smirked. She believed she had won. But what she didn't know was, that wasn't just any taxi driver. That was Chief Maxwell Johnson, the billionaire CEO of Maxwell Group of Companies, her husband's boss, and her life was about to change in ways she never imagined. 6 hours earlier, Jonathan Okafor stood in the shower, letting the water run down his exhausted face. The walls of the bathroom echoed with silence, but his heart was loud with worry. Every day was like walking into a storm named Cynthia. Since the day he married her 10 years ago, nothing had remained the same. She had always been a difficult woman, but the past few years had been unbearable. They'd been forced to move from their former apartment after she poured hot water on their landlord's wife during an argument. Cynthia had gone into hiding, and Jonathan spent 2 weeks in police custody, begging for mercy and explaining himself to neighbors and the police. When she finally returned, she came with tears and apologies. "I'm sorry," she had said on her knees in their sitting room. "I'll change, I promise." He wanted to believe her, and for a short time, it seemed she tried. But nothing really changed. Cynthia's temper, pride, and disrespect for others only grew worse. The neighbors in their new compound avoided her like a plague. Even traders at the market began whispering about the cursed woman who had no child despite 10 years of marriage. "They say it's because you've offended too many people," his mother once said in a voice filled with pain. "God doesn't bless a heart filled with hate." But Jonathan stayed, because once upon a time, Cynthia had saved his life. She was the one who helped him through school, while he struggled as an orphan. She worked like a horse washing clothes, selling food, and even sleeping under stalls in the market just to send him money. She gave him everything, her youth, her sweat, her future. So how could he abandon her now, even though she was now the storm that destroyed everything he worked for? That afternoon, Cynthia stepped out into the market, holding her woven basket with class and attitude. Her gold wristwatch sparkled under the sun, and her artificial nails clicked against her phone as she called one of her friends to gossip about a neighbor's broken marriage. After buying everything she needed, she spotted a Toyota parked nearby. A middle-aged man sat inside, wearing a plain shirt and trousers, the kind worn by taxi drivers or retired men just trying to survive. She knocked on the window and asked if he could give her a ride. The man gave a warm nod. "Hop in, madam." The ride was smooth. The man didn't talk much. He smiled occasionally and responded politely when she barked instructions. When they reached her house, Cynthia turned to leave without paying. "You didn't say it was free," the man said, gently. "Free?" Cynthia scoffed. "I thought you were being kind. Don't act like a saint now." "I don't mind helping. But honesty is important. The slap came so fast. Then the water. "You're lucky I don't call the police on you," she yelled before turning away. Evening came. When Jonathan returned home that night, he was unusually cheerful. "Cynthia," he called. "You won't believe who I saw today." She turned with excitement. "Who?" "There's this taxi driver I've been hearing about at work. He gives free rides to people sometimes. They say he's strange, always quiet, always humble. So today, someone showed me his picture, and I realized you slapped him this afternoon." Cynthia laughed, proudly scrolling through her phone. "This man?" She held up the picture she took of him after the incident. Jonathan's face changed immediately. He looked at the photo, blinked twice, and then his hands began to shake. He grabbed the phone and smashed it on the floor. "No, no, no. Cynthia, what have you done?" She stared, stunned. "What's wrong with you?" "That man you humiliated is Chief Maxwell Johnson, the CEO of Maxwell Group, my boss, the owner of the entire company. Cynthia, you've ruined me." He dropped to his knees, clutching his head, sobbing uncontrollably. Cynthia's mouth fell open. Her legs felt like jelly. "Wait, what are you saying?" Before he could answer, the loud sound of approaching vehicles filled the air outside. Then came the knock on their door. Heavy, loud, repeated, and when they opened it, they saw them. Armed security men, heavily armed. The compound in Oshodi lit up with flashing lights as a black bulletproof SUV rolled to a stop behind the two other security vehicles already parked in front of the Okafor's small apartment. Cynthia stood frozen at the door, her hands trembling. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Jonathan was still on his knees, sweat dripping from his forehead despite the cold breeze of the night. The lead security officer, a tall, muscular man in black uniform, stepped forward. "Mrs. Cynthia Okafor," he said in a firm, emotionless voice, "you are under arrest for harassment, physical assault, defamation, and verbal threat of blackmail." Cynthia's eyes widened. "Arrest?" She laughed nervously. "What are you talking about? I didn't do anything. It was just a misunderstanding with a driver." But the men didn't flinch. Two of them stepped forward and gently took her by the arms. "You have the right to remain silent," one of them added. "Jonathan, say something," she screamed, twisting and struggling in their grip. "Tell them! Tell them I didn't mean it! That man provoked me!" Jonathan looked away. He couldn't meet her eyes. One of the guards turned to him. "You, sir? You are also coming with us for questioning." "No, please," he cried. "It wasn't me. I had no idea. I didn't know she did that to him until now. Please." They didn't respond. Within seconds, both husband and wife were escorted into separate vehicles. The neighbors peeked from their windows and gates, whispering, shaking their heads. "That woman's mouth has finally landed them in big trouble. I knew it. One day, someone she insulted would fight back." Inside the SUV, Cynthia sat with her arms crossed tightly. Her lips pursed in fury and fear. Her pride was beginning to crack like thin glass under pressure. "How can this be happening to me?" she thought. "All because of a common man in a common car. This has to be a mistake." But her heart refused to believe her thoughts. Because deep inside, she knew that man didn't behave like an ordinary driver. His calmness, his eyes, the quiet power in his silence. She had mocked him, humiliated him, and threatened him without knowing she was digging a pit for herself. The SUV stopped at a private estate in Ikoyi. A large black gate opened slowly, revealing a mansion that looked like something from a movie: marble walls, golden lights, water fountains, and uniformed staff walking briskly. This place?" Cynthia whispered. "Yes," the officer beside her said. "Chief Maxwell Johnson lives here." Inside the mansion, Jonathan was already kneeling in the center of a large room that looked like a royal courtroom. Tears streamed down his face as he faced the man seated across from him on a golden armchair, the same man who had once offered him his first job, who had mentored him and praised his work. Maxwell Johnson. The billionaire looked nothing like a taxi driver now. He wore a sharp black agbada with golden embroidery. His hair, now neatly brushed, framed his strong face like a crown. His eyes, calm and deep, watched Jonathan without blinking. "Sir," Jonathan cried, "please, I beg you, forgive me. Don't punish me for her actions. I had no idea what she did until she showed me the picture." "I trusted you," Maxwell said quietly. "You were one of my best engineers. And this is the woman you married?" Jonathan bowed even lower, his voice cracking. "She wasn't always like this. She saved my life. She sponsored my education when nobody else would. I owe her everything. But something changed in her. I believe her problem is beyond the physical." Maxwell's eyes flickered slightly at those words. Just then, Cynthia was led into the room by two guards. Her clothes were rumpled, her eyes red from crying. She looked around the grand room in disbelief. "This is impossible," she muttered. "You're not a driver. You're the CEO?" "I am," Maxwell said, standing up slowly. "And you? You are the face of every proud, cruel, and arrogant person the poor meet every day. I disguise myself often to feel what the poor feel. That day, I was testing the world, and you failed." Cynthia dropped to her knees instantly. "Sir, please. I didn't know. I was just tired. I was angry. I didn't mean to disrespect you. Please forgive me." Maxwell said nothing. Instead, he reached into a brown envelope beside him and handed a sealed letter to Jonathan. Jonathan's hands trembled as he opened it. "No, no," he gasped. "This is a dismissal letter." He broke down on the floor, shaking and sobbing. "Sir, please, don't do this. Don't destroy me. Please." Maxwell stared at him for a long time. Then he turned to one of his aides and gave a simple command. "Take them to the holding quarters for the night. We'll talk again in the morning." That night, the couple sat in silence in a cold guest room. No phones, no visitors, no sound but the ticking of a gold clock on the wall. Jonathan sat on the edge of the bed, burying his face in his hands. Cynthia paced the floor, her heart pounding. "I ruined everything," she whispered. "I finally did it." Jonathan didn't answer. He was too tired, too broken. Then suddenly, he spoke, his voice low and dry. "You know what hurts the most, Cynthia?" She paused. "It's not just the fact that I lost my job. It's not the embarrassment. It's that I stayed. I stayed for you. Even when you gave me 1,000 reasons to walk away, I stayed because I believed in your goodness. But now I don't know if that person even exists anymore." Cynthia sat down slowly, tears filling her eyes. "I was scared," she said. "Scared that if I looked weak, no one would respect me. I felt like if I didn't fight every battle, the world would trample me." "No," Jonathan said softly. "You became the person you feared." And just as Cynthia opened her mouth to respond, the door opened. Maxwell entered the room, this time alone. He looked at both of them. Jonathan stood up. Cynthia dropped to her knees once more. "I have one question," Maxwell said, "and your answer will determine what happens next." He turned to Jonathan. "Why didn't you divorce her?" Jonathan swallowed hard. His voice trembled. "Because we're both orphans. She gave me a future, gave me everything. And somewhere deep inside, I believe her anger comes from pain, not evil." Maxwell nodded slowly, and what he said next left them speechless. "I will help her." The air was thick with silence. Cynthia lifted her head slowly, unsure if she had heard correctly. Her tear-stained face quivered. You will help me." Maxwell Johnson stood tall in the center of the cold guest room. His calm eyes looked between husband and wife, one trembling with shame, the other kneeling with regret. "Yes," he said again, "but only because your husband chose mercy over revenge. Not because you deserve it, Cynthia, but because he believes in you, even after all you've done." Jonathan lowered his head. A single tear rolled down his cheek. Maxwell turned and walked toward the door, then paused. "Tomorrow, you'll come to the mansion. I want to show you something. If you really want to change, you'll start there." And with that, he left. The next morning, Cynthia could barely sleep through the night. Every blink brought a new wave of guilt and images of her mistakes. By morning, she was already dressed in a simple gown, her makeup forgotten, her hair tied back, no jewelry. For once, she looked exactly like the people she used to insult. When they arrived at the Maxwell mansion again, it was a different Cynthia that walked in quiet, head bowed, and broken. Maxwell received them in the garden. He sat on a wooden bench beside a small pond, feeding birds with crumbs from a small plate. He didn't look up when he spoke. "Do you know what I do with most people who treat others the way you treated me, Cynthia?" She said nothing. "I cut them off. I never see them again. But with you, I saw something different. Not because of your actions. No, your actions were ugly. But because of your husband's loyalty and pain, I decided to look deeper." He finally turned to her. "There's a woman you hurt some years ago. An old woman. Do you remember her?" Cynthia frowned. "I've hurt many. Her name is Mama Ngozi. You insulted her in the market, unprovoked. Do you remember throwing her basket and calling her a useless witch?" Cynthia's eyes widened. A flash of memory returned the day. She mocked an old woman in the presence of others for accidentally stepping on her shoe. She remembered yelling, "Wretched fool, go and die already." And when the woman tried to speak, she slapped her and walked away. Maxwell nodded slowly. That day, she said nothing. But she whispered something to herself before she left. Cynthia's mouth dried up. Her heart thudded. She said, "You will have all the riches in the world and wear all the gold you want, but until you return and kneel before me with true remorse, you will never carry a child." Cynthia gasped. Her knees gave way beneath her, and she slumped to the floor. "No, no, no," she sobbed, shaking her head. I didn't know. Maxwell stood. "But now you do. And now, I want you to go find her, wherever she is. Beg her, sincerely. And if she forgives you, maybe heaven will too." Later that day, Cynthia sat at the back of a car Maxwell assigned to her, driving through parts of Lagos she hadn't visited in years, the slums, the markets, the places she used to call dirty zones. The driver stopped in front of a wooden shed in a small corner of Mushin. "There," the man said. "That's her house." Cynthia stepped down, her legs trembling. A few children playing nearby stared at her curiously. She walked to the entrance and knocked. It took a while, but then the door opened. Mama Ngozi stood there. Her back was slightly bent with age, and she wore a simple wrapper and blouse. Her hair was wrapped in faded ankara, and her eyes, though weak, held a fire that could not be ignored. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Cynthia dropped to her knees in the sand. "Mama, please," she whispered. "I am sorry." The woman looked at her, puzzled. "I didn't know the pain I caused you. I was full of myself. I treated you like nothing. Please, forgive me. I've lost so much already. I have no child, no peace, no joy. I'm begging you, please." A crowd began to gather. Mama Ngozi looked down at her. "Do you remember what you called me?" Cynthia nodded, eyes flooded. "I called you a useless witch. I was wrong. I was foolish. And you threw my basket of tomatoes into the gutter. I will pay back everything. Please, just don't let your words destroy me." The old woman said nothing for a long time. Then she slowly lowered herself to the ground and placed her hands on Cynthia's head. "I forgive you," she said quietly. "Not because you cried, but because you came back." Cynthia broke down into uncontrollable sobs. The old woman smiled faintly. "Go. The heavens have heard it." 1 week later, Cynthia stood in front of the mirror, brushing her hair, when she suddenly felt dizzy. She placed her hand on the wall, trying to steady herself. Jonathan rushed into the room. "Cynthia, what is it?" She shook her head. I don't know. I feel lightheaded. I feel strange." He helped her sit. "Let's go to the hospital, now." They rushed out, hearts pounding. The nurses attended to her immediately. Blood tests, scans, tension. Then the doctor returned with a soft smile. "Congratulations," he said. Cynthia blinked. What? You're pregnant. Jonathan staggered back in shock. What? Cynthia gasped, her hands on her mouth. I'm pregnant? The doctor nodded. Jonathan broke into tears, hugging her tightly. God! God is merciful! But Cynthia just wept silently, not from the joy of pregnancy alone, but from the weight of everything she had learned. She had insulted a stranger and nearly lost everything. She had humiliated a poor man, only to find out he was her husband's boss. She had offended a poor old woman and lost the blessing of motherhood for a decade. And now, because of forgiveness, the chains had broken. But Maxwell Johnson had one more thing to say, and it would change their lives forever. Cynthia cradled the pregnancy test in her trembling hand, her eyes filled with tears. The words, "You are pregnant," had echoed in her head all night, like music from heaven. After 10 long, bitter years of waiting, something inside her was finally alive. Jonathan couldn't stop smiling. For the first time in years, there was peace in their home. A home once filled with shouting, insults, and sadness, now filled with quiet prayers and hope. But peace didn't last long. The following morning, they received a letter from the Maxwell Group, stamped with the CEO's seal. Inside was a formal invitation to dinner at Maxwell Johnson's private estate. Not just dinner, a final meeting of reflection and restoration. Jonathan read it aloud, then looked up. "Do you think this is another test?" "I don't know," Cynthia whispered, her voice shaky. "But we'll go, no matter what." That evening, the Okafors arrived at the estate, both dressed modestly. No jewelry, no flashy designer, clothes, just sincerity and humility in every step. They were welcomed into a massive dining room. The long table sparkled under golden lights, filled with food. Yet only 3 seats were arranged, one for Cynthia, one for Jonathan, and one for Maxwell. Maxwell entered a moment later, wearing a calm smile. "You came," he said simply, sitting across from them. "Thank you, sir," Jonathan replied, bowing his head. Maxwell looked at Cynthia. "You're glowing. I hear congratulations are in order." She nodded, tearing up. "Yes, and it's all because of your mercy, sir." Maxwell took a deep breath. "I'm glad. But I invited you here because I believe one last step remains. Cynthia, you've asked for forgiveness from me and from Mama Ngozi. But now, you must face something harder, looking into your own past." Cynthia stiffened. "I've made a list of 10 people you wronged. Deeply drivers, market women, neighbors, people you embarrassed, cheated, or humiliated." Her mouth fell slightly open. "I want you to visit each one," Maxwell said. "Say sorry. Not because you're forced to, but because you mean it." Cynthia lowered her eyes. "Yes, sir, I will. I promise." "There's one more thing," he continued, reaching under the table. He brought out a large brown envelope and slid it toward Jonathan. Jonathan opened it carefully. Inside was a new employment letter. His eyes widened. "Sir, this is—" "A promotion," Maxwell said. "Senior project supervisor. Double your former salary and full family medical benefits." Jonathan dropped to his knees. "Sir, thank you. Thank you so much." Maxwell stood and walked around the table until he reached Cynthia. He placed his hand gently on her shoulder. "Remember this. Those who forgive may never forget, but they choose mercy over revenge. And those who learn humility receive more than wealth. They receive peace." Tears flowed freely from Cynthia's eyes, and just when they thought the evening couldn't get any more emotional, Maxwell said, "I want you both to move into the company's executive residence. You've passed the final test." 3 months later, the once modest lives of Cynthia and Jonathan Okafor had taken a quiet but powerful turn. Their new home, a spacious, serene residence in the Maxwell Group executive estate, stood as a daily reminder of grace, mercy, and the beauty of change. It wasn't just about the luxury furniture, or the gated compound, or the polished floors. It was about the peace that now filled their lives. A peace neither of them had known in over a decade. Cynthia, now visibly pregnant, sat in the garden each morning, reading her Bible or journaling her thoughts. She had changed not just on the outside, but deep within. Her voice, once sharp and fiery, now spoke with gentleness. Her steps, once prideful, now moved with grace. She had visited all 10 people Maxwell listed, from Mama Iabo, the street vendor she once insulted, to the security man she once slapped for not opening the gate fast enough. Each visit came with tears, kneeling, and sincere apologies. And every time she heard the words, "I forgive you," it felt like a weight lifted from her soul. One afternoon, while Maxwell was on a video call with foreign investors, he excused himself midway and stepped out of his office, something he rarely ever did during meetings. But that day was different. He drove himself to the Okafor's home and asked to speak privately with Cynthia. She welcomed him into the garden. "I've been watching you from afar," he said gently. "And I've seen real change, Cynthia." "Thank you, sir," she said quietly. "Every day, I wake up grateful for your second chance." "I didn't give you that second chance," he replied. "You earned it. But more importantly, you chose it. That's something money or power can't force." He paused for a moment. "I want to tell you something personal. Years ago, I was just like you, proud, angry, quick to humiliate anyone I thought was below me. Then one day, someone I looked down on saved my life. That moment changed me forever. Since then, I started living differently." Cynthia looked up, eyes soft. "That's why you disguise as a poor man." He smiled. "Exactly, because true power is tested when no one knows who you are." A cool breeze swept through the garden as birds chirped in the trees. It was peaceful. Just then, Jonathan walked out with a doctor's report in hand, grinning. "Cynthia," he called. "You won't believe this. The scan says it's a boy, and he's healthy." Tears filled her eyes. "A boy?" Maxwell chuckled warmly. "Well then, I hope you've picked a name." Without hesitation, Cynthia looked up at him and said, "Yes, we'll name him Maxwell." There was a long pause. Maxwell's lips pressed together, and he nodded, visibly moved. As he stood to leave, he turned to them one last time. "You've both passed life's toughest tests: humility, forgiveness, and love. Now go and raise a son who will do even better." If you like this story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.